ever since I was little, I had this whole grand dream of changing the world through advertising. I really don't know why, but I was so, I guess, enamored by, the ability of brands to communicate stories in such a short amount of time. And I felt like that was such a good avenue to reach people. But then when I did get into advertising, corporate advertising, I realized that it wasn't really as idealistic as I had painted it. And at the end of the day, it was still very much rooted in, making money. And it didn't really align to my values. So in the middle of kind of being torn between whether I should stay in this dream job or, find something else, I always kind of found solace in travel, especially in traveling around the Philippines. I love hiking. I love, swimming in the beaches, diving, even climbing. Rock climbing is like one of my biggest hobbies. So, doing that and seeing the huge impact of travel really kind of opened my eyes, and I really wanted to do something about it. And it was just fortunate that I met the co-founders of Mad Travel, and I completely bought into their vision of, making travel more restorative rather than destructive. And yeah, I've been there since 2017, early 2017, and it's been such a wild ride since. The main challenge was working for a social enterprise that wasn't really the most lucrative. So adjusting my lifestyle to, meet the sudden need. Also kind of more internally, I guess, battling this whole idea of, seeing what my peers are doing and what they're achieving in very more traditional paths, and kind of doubting whether I was actually, doing something quite practical for myself. But more, I guess, related to the job. I think it was such a huge learning curve at the very start to, build trust with the communities. Because since I started as a tour guide and a community developer, I was really kind of the link of the company to the partner communities that we were working with. So, shedding that whole idea that, I'm from the city, I'm from, this really, nice university, and them knowing that, of course, right? First, really shedding their perception of me so that we could actually have a genuine, authentic relationship without them thinking that I'm, quote unquote, better or smarter. Because, knowing myself as well, that I had more to learn from them than they had to learn from me. So I think it was really kind of, trying to prove to the community that I was there, not just to help, but to form a genuine relationship with them. And at the end of the day, it really paid off. That it was difficult at the start, because if it was easy, then I don't think I would have formed such a close connection with them. So since our solutions are very community centric, we also really try to incorporate, or I guess bring in the community as early as possible. So for one of our flagship tours, for example, in San Felipe, Zambales with the AITAs, it took us maybe a year of really just courting them and learning about their needs, learning about their dreams, learning about what is that gap that is, missing from all these skills and resources that they have, and why they can't get to their dreams, and really trying to understand that, right? So with every community, that's what we do. We do kind of like a vision board and try to see, okay, where do we want to go with each other or through these tours in 1 year's time, in 3 years' time, in 5 years' time. And then from there, map out how we can possibly do that. And with a lean team like Mad Travel, planning was really key in assigning roles, but also the flexibility to kind of take on different hats and different roles as well. So that was very helpful. So yes, but also really engaging the community as much as we can. To go back to what I said earlier, so much of these interactions really show how much we can learn more from them than they can learn from us, right? Or equally, probably. So it's all about trying to be in tune with what they can offer and how we can integrate that into these solutions, because we don't really see it as us, solving the problems for them. We see it as us engaging with them so that they can solve it for themselves. New communities, for example, it's really hard to actually get them in the mindset of looking long term. Very understandably so, because they can't even think of what food will be on the table a month from now, right? So it's very short-term thinking because it's survival mode. So for us, it's really at the very start, showing them proof of concept and engaging them in a way that they can already benefit from it in the short term, so that they have the opportunity to actually look long term. So in terms of evaluation and monitoring, we usually look at 3 aspects. So it's environmental, economic, and cultural. So I think, in a traditional enterprise, environmental and cultural is so out of, that's not something board members or, an organization would talk about at all. But for us, it's such a huge measure of success, because especially since we work with a lot of indigenous tribes, we really see how their culture is affected by the poverty and the lack of resources. So we wanted that to be a metric of growth and success. If in a year's time, more kids are able to learn about their songs, their dances, their native games, then, that's a qualitative measure of success for us, a level of security for them that they can actually allot time to share that culture. It's kind of the general way we do it. I hope that gives a good idea. The first month of the pandemic, we really got hit hard by it. It was really hard because I think, for everyone, nobody really saw that coming. But I think it was also really good that even before the pandemic, we always saw ourselves as more than just a travel company. And so whenever we engage with our partner communities, our main, long-term goal is for them to not need us anymore in the long term, right? The last thing we want is for them to be dependent on tourism. So for some of our communities, we've already helped them set up systems where, they plant crops and they're able to harvest that better and actually, be employed as farmers again. And then they can actually turn those crops into something else, right? So we, maybe a year before the pandemic, we already started some business consultancy with them. So particularly with the Aita tribe of Zambales, and I already had some small businesses going on in the community. So apart from MAD courses, the immediate thing to do was actually to pivot into MAD Market, where we kind of helped all these communities old partnerships and also new through the pandemic to bring their produce to Metro Manila because, if you remember the first few months of the pandemic, like, oh my gosh, it was so hard. People couldn't get anything, right? So it solved the need in the city, but it also solved the need in, our partner communities in the provinces. So it really helped that we had that long-term vision and long-term plan of, not making them dependent on tourism. And yeah, the other way was to really engage with them through creating courses. That was also something that we had already planned even before the pandemic because we really saw ourselves as more of an educational platform rather than purely a tourist platform. So I wouldn't say I'm thankful for the pandemic. It's definitely, taken so many lives and, put so many people in such bad situations. But I'm very thankful that we had these plans in place before it happened and we were able to kind of pivot easily. It's definitely not been easy though. Thankfully, all of them are doing well. These tribes have been through so much even before we went there, and they're some of the most resilient people I know. And I can't imagine that a pandemic is what will kind of like destroy them. But of course, they remain very vulnerable, and that's why we remain careful as well. But what we've been trying to do as a company is really trying to engage them in all our courses and all our market work as much as possible. And we definitely want to expand as fast as possible so that we can engage more and more of them. I hope we all learn from food though, right? Like, I hope it gives us a better sense of like community, but also responsibility for each other. I mean, it's kind of ironic to say that because we're all so I guess disconnected from each other physically, but I personally feel like there's this huge hope in me that we would feel more responsible for each other and the environment and all these other factors that play into how this whole pandemic played out. Most of our guests have definitely given us so much feedback on what they've learned about how travel can be. Yes, that's the first and primary role for us, to really kind of put the word out there that how we've experienced travel doesn't have to continue as it is. But we also definitely see the irony of us saying we don't really totally 100% believe in sustainable travel, because for travel to happen, there are a lot of, there's a lot of carbon footprint, there's a lot of waste, but we try to, show people a different way, and that's our primary role, I guess, and really getting that word out. I mean, our hope is for us to inspire others to be competitors of mad travel, have these kinds of experiences as well. We don't want to be alone in this game, right? We're very happy when we see more companies and more social enterprises exhibiting, or I guess taking up community-based travel as well, as long as we know that it's responsible. Don't be discouraged by how complex or big the issues are. You can always start in the smallest ways, right? Start with yourself. Start with talking to your own, network. Talk to your friends, to your family, and really try to understand the problems that you want to solve. Sometimes we have an idea of, these big solutions already, and we forget about the influence we have on our immediate communities and immediate networks. So, put yourself out there, get into difficult conversations, and don't judge yourself too harshly for not going big just yet, right? Of course, if you have a great idea for social enterprise, by all means. But if it bogs you down to already, create change in a big way, then there's no reason for you to not start small. Like, don't be afraid to start small and just scale from there. Sometimes, like, we don't even know that, just talking to people can inspire them to create change as well. But also, like, if you have friends who do not think the same way as you, like, don't be afraid to challenge them in a respectful way. I feel like because of how we use the internet and social media these days, we come kind of like headstrong too much, and we already cancel people who have different opinions, when we can maybe invite them to understand why our goal might be the better mission to take on. So sometimes it's easier to also converse with these people and try to change their minds, because you won't change their minds by just shouting at them immediately, right? So